Time now for a look back at the last week in the craft beer industry. Pour a cold one and sit back for an all-new episode of Pints and Quarts, presented by Craft Beer Nation.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pints and Quarts. This is a weekly beer industry news show brought to you by Craft Beer Nation. We are here on episode 21. Today is October the 30th, 2014. It is All Hallows Eve, and we are joined by a kind of a good friend, I would say. We've known him around the interwebs and Google Plus here for a few years now. Mark Pyle of the Erie Better Beer Bureau. They are a group that do beer reviews on YouTube and basically just get together and drink and carouse and have shenanigans and stuff. So basically something that Craft Beer Nation can relate to. So we've got Mark here, but in addition to him, we've also got Lola Laracy, Doug Nolan, Randy Gardner Jr., Ashley Bauer, and Gil Mello, myself, Matt Miller. And let's jump right into this, Mark. Mark, say hello. Tell us a little bit about how you guys got started.
Well, hey, everybody. Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, I've been following Craft Beer Nation for quite a while now. The Erie Better Beer Bureau started with the three guys from Erie, Pat, Dave, and Jason Morey, and it started out basically with an in-person trade. Been trading beer for several years, and I did an in-person trade with Morey in Erie, and one day I told him he needs to come to my basement, to see the beers that I had, and he was pretty much.
Thanks for clarifying that.
He needs to come to my basement. Hey, I just finished watching American Horror Story, so.
Don't worry about a thing. Just come to my basement. But,
right. I'll bring my
that's how it started. It was an in-person trade between me and him, and he invited me to do a video review, and I think mine and his first video review was White Chocolate from the brewery.
Yeah.
And I do love going back, and it was way back in early videos. How we started was kind of fun. But that's how we started, and we just started. I would come in, fill in, do a few videos here and there, and their big thing was just bringing craft beer to Erie, Pennsylvania, because it wasn't a big market yet. And there's a lot of people there. It's a big city, and that's where it started. And we just wanted to bring good beer to Erie.
How long ago was that in-person trade where you met?
About 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys do several? Like when you get together, you do a bunch of reviews, or you just do one? And
no, generally we try to fit in 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or 5. Depending on what we all bring. I mean, if there's a beer we have to review, we'll try to fit another one in. We can usually do that pretty well.
Yeah, by the time you get to that 3rd or 4th one, your palates are tired and you're hammered, so you gotta.
Well, and we realize that over the last few years of reviewing, we drink a lot of water. We do a lot of palate cleansing and stuff like that in between beers. I mean, we really do.
Yeah.
So it's not we just go from one beer to the other and just keep slamming beers. I mean, we prep ourselves pretty well.
Oh,
so go ahead, Gil.
I was just wondering how many shows you do, because it seems that when I watch your shows, the reviews are always from beers that just came out, and I was like, always new beers, it seems, and that's why I was wondering if you just do one at a time as soon as you get the beer, or.
Right. Yeah. We don't do one at a time. We really do like to try to get the newest beers released. All 4 of us. All 4 of us put in a lot of input and a lot of messages back and forth. New releases, and in between 2 or 3 of us, we like to do a lot of different trading to really try to get the newer beers out there, and really try to be one of the first ones out there to review a newer beer, and seasonal especially too. Seasonals really are a big viewers.
So do you guys ever Do you ever review the same beer, maybe like a beer that's released maybe once a year? Do you ever review it in consecutive years, just to see how the flavor profile may have changed?
No, I mean, we do talk about it a lot. I know a lot of times we get beers. Well, I'll say, well, I have another one sitting in the cellar. We're going to have to try to, revisit this one, and I'll end up trading it or something like that. But yeah, there's not a lot of them that we actually redo. There's some of them we want to because palates change.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's just so much out there.
Yeah, I mean, there is, and a lot of times, the beers, like anniversary beers or something, different beers that are released every year have something a little bit different to them, a different coffee or a different barrel that it's brewed in. So, we just try, we just end up sticking with the one beer and go with it. Yeah, that's pretty much what we do.
So you guys have been doing this now for 3 years roughly, right? Or
yeah,
okay,
around there.
So at this point, I like to assume that you guys have a method, right? You don't just kind of just say, just talk about how the beer tastes. You guys have a certain thing that you look for or a certain protocol you follow, nose, palate, finish, overall, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your specific techniques when it comes to tasting beers? Is there anything in particular that you do that you try to, be consistent about going from beer to beer?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you ever watch videos, I mean, even I'll go back to the beginning when we really started, to where we do now. I mean, we really evolved. I mean, and we really do a lot of viewers request certain things. Like I've mentioned before, we like to do a lot of blind reviews. Are really big now. A lot of people do the blind reviews. I mean, we really, it's honest. We don't know. One guy brings in a beer, and he will tell the viewers what it is. We sit there and we got to try to figure out what style it is, if it's barrel aged, if it's aged with fruit or anything like that. And it really, really, really works the mind, and it's really fun to do those reviews. There's really no protocol.
Yeah.
We just, we'll just see what's out there. We'll see what's new. We'll see what's seasonal, and we try to get that out there first. Before a lot of other people do.
Yeah.
And that way has been really successful for us.
I like to think those blind reviews probably almost kind of enhance your palate a little bit because it's totally a blank canvas going into it.
Right.
And so you can kind of pick up everything about the beer.
And that's why we do it. I mean, they're really fun to do because, there's some beers that are, rather similar. I mean, you can get a regular IPA or a double IPA, and sometimes you cannot tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like a Belgian quad to a barley wine. Some of them are very similar, and you have to sit there, and try to decipher, which is which. Mm-hmm. And when you're doing reviews, sometimes you're thinking about it and you're like, man, I'm giving you what I got right now, and it ends up being really fun, and it really is knowledgeable too. I mean, it really works your palate and works your brain to really try to figure out what these beers are, and it's a lot of fun.
I'd like to know a little bit about your personal tastes. So over 3 years of doing reviews, I know personally in my journey through craft beer, I started this as a porter stouts guy. I like the dark beer. I like the bitter beer. I like this is what I like. And over the years, I've had phases where I just couldn't get enough IPAs and double IPAs and malty Scotch ales and stuff like. Where did you start and where are you now? What's your preferred beer?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm old as hell, so.
We all are, my friend.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I started way back in the early mid '90s where I really was changing it up between like just the imported English beers, German beers. I was trying anything I could that had some flavor. I mean, that's where it started. I mean, simple as Amber Bock, Michelob Amber Bock or something that had some flavor. I mean, I just really wanted something back in the early '90s. And it's a lot about education. Where the beer came from and all the different craft beers that started at that age. And, my favorite beers back then were it started lighter. It started with the brown ales, stuff like that, the pale ales and stuff. And I really didn't like big IPAs until probably really late 2000s. I mean, it was it was the big hoppy beers. I think Simcoe IPA from Weyerbacher was the biggest one that got me into the big IPA beers. But generally, I liked a lot of the big imperial stouts, milk stouts are my favorite beers.
You probably wouldn't find many of the big IPAs much more than 6 or 7 years ago. I wouldn't say.
Yeah, that's when the big double IPAs started coming out, and that's when I really started liking them. And just like 3 or 4, maybe 3 years ago was the sours. Sometimes it takes a long time for the sours people to really understand what a sour is about and what it's supposed to taste like, and then you start adding the fruit, and the different nuances that sours can bring, and then it just opens up a whole other world, and and that's when I really wanted to start really catching up, and what was I missing, and craft beer just took off about a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm like you in that. When I first had an IPA, when I first got into craft beer, I did not like it at all. I think it was Sierra Nevada. It wasn't even an IPA. It was a Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale.
Pale Ale?
Oh, man, that's bitter. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm drinking a Heady Topper. So.
Yeah, mine was a Great Lakes Burning River. First time I had that maybe 10 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, that's bitter. That's ridiculous, Yeah. And now it's one of the weaker beers out there, and still a very good beer, and I still drink it to this day. But once you realize what hops are and what they're supposed to taste like, and education is huge, I think, in craft beer. You can't just pick up a beer and because you don't know what it is, and you start realizing what certain beers are supposed to taste like. Things will start opening up for you, I think.
It's really cool that doing these reviews forces you to open up your palate, because I mean you may actually be trying a beer that you don't really care for as far as the style goes. So being that you've tried so many different styles, is there any beer that you review that stands out as better than anything else that you've reviewed? Like what's the best one you've had?
Oh boy, well I can go back. I can sit there and go back 2, 3, 4 years ago and think of a beer as being, this is amazing. Just some simple Samuel Smith's Oatmeal Stout or Young's Oatmeal Stout. I mean, those were, to me, 4 years ago, were about as best you can get. I mean, they were fantastic, and I loved them. And, I drank them for years. But, palates change. American craft beer has changed so much. One of the only couple of beers that I actually rated a 5, which I rarely give a beer a 5. It was the Bourbon County Brand Stout Vanilla. Blew me away.
It's coming back this year.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a different recipe a little bit, but it's coming back. So and actually we did side by side. We did the rare, and we did the vanilla. And the history between the two of them are ridiculous. And I tell you what, the vanilla won out, and all 4 of us rated it a 5.0, and that was the best beer I've ever had.
Wow.
There are some other ones that we rated a 5. I think I rated the Hair of the Dog beer a 5. Hair of the Dog Matt, I think I rated a 5, and that was about it. I mean, there's not really any other beers I rated a 5, but it's really hard to give a beer a 5. I mean, it really is. As many beers as we've had, that are elite status, it's really tough to give a beer that big of a score.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we all kind of have the same feeling when we watch your reviews. We get a good feeling of what's going on in the beer, and that's why I like about reviews. Whether it's you or whether it's a good friend of ours, Simon Martin.
Yes.
If I see a beer that's coming out, I kind of want to know what it's going to taste like before I spend $15 on a 4-pack of it, or something to that effect, or trade for it even more so.
Right.
So as a craft beer consumer, I applaud you and I thank you for your efforts. So keep drinking that beer and keep putting it on camera for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I really feel that every time you talk tonight, I should have played this music. You know, I just think I should have had that laid in behind everything you said. Is what
I was thinking about that myself.
Yeah, I'll edit that back in later. We'll add that all.
There we go.
So.
That'd be nice.
So, but no, let's actually move on to some of the news. And actually, one of the news articles I think is going to come back around to you specifically. But let's do these in order here. First, this is just crazy. I think we've had Jeff Davis. I don't think he's been on this show, but he's been on our Friday Night Hangouts. But he lives in Florida. Well, Lola does too as well. But they've got crazy growler laws down there. Lola, get into that for us.
All right. First of all, I'm going to read a quote from the complaint. I actually read the complaint. They actually said the same thing several times, so it was a little bit wordy, but this stood out. I love this quote. A jug is not a public menace.
So what you're alluding to is what we're talking about here is the fact that in Florida you cannot buy a container of beer off premises that is greater than 32 ounces or less than 128. So you can buy a grunt and you can buy a gallon, but you cannot buy a growler of beer and take it off premise.
Right.
Either you get just normal or you really get drunk. They don't want to just tipsy.
Nowhere in between.
Yeah.
That's right.
The interesting thing is, I read 2 different articles. One article is the one that we actually had the link to that we were looking at. Can Florida ban beer growlers by Brad Warbiani? And he makes the point that the reason they're doing it is because with a 32-ounce one, with a growler, you're supposed to drink it within a day or 2 because it's going to go bad. So if you're going to drink a 32-ounce in a night, that's fine. But a 64-ounce, if you plan to drink that within a day or 2, that's going to lead to serious intoxication. That's his point. Right. Now, but when I looked at another article that says lawsuit targets idiotic Florida ban on beer growlers, their point, which makes a lot more sense, is, well, you can buy beer in much larger quantities. You can buy a 128-ounce gallon, like we said, and nobody's going to stop you from drinking that at the same time. So there's no reason that just banning this certain span of quantity is going to keep you from being intoxicated. And I actually,
No, and in fact, the fact that you can buy a 6-pack, which is 72 ounces, just in 6 individual containers, is completely legal and fine. You just can't buy one 64-ounce container. Go ahead, Lola.
Yeah, and well, the first article where he's kind of pro the regulation, he says with the 6-packs, they're not going to go bad as quickly because they're individually contained. He says the problem is with the containers that aren't meant to last more than a day or 2. Which, okay, I kind of ceded a little bit on that. But then when I read the actual complaint, I came back more to the side of, they shouldn't have this ban. The complaint is from they call themselves a growler, what was it? A growler, not garden, something like that. They specifically do growlers. And they're in Stuart, Florida, and they're called the Crafted Keg LLC. And they actually had a lot of good points. As far as the complaint, they say that for this to be a valid regulation, it needs to prove that having 64-ounce growlers will be a public threat. So this needs to be some sort of menace, which is where they get the quote, a jug is not a menace. Well, they make the point that you can go in and buy 2 32-ounce growlers. There's no regulation stopping you from double fisting it with 2 32-ounce growlers and then going home.
Yeah.
And if the problem is you're drinking too much, what's up with the 120-ounce growlers? You can get that. You can get a whole freaking 128-ounce thing and go home and drink yourself until you're passed out on your front stoop. So they're not protecting the people in that sense. And the complaint also goes on to state that their business is hurt. And I never thought about this because, at first I was kind of like, well, people can still get beer. What's the big deal? Well, a lot of people come to Florida from other states, and we're only one of 3 that actually outlaw this, type of growler. So people from other states bring their 64-ounce growlers, and when they try to fill it up at the crafted keg has to deny it. And they state that they've had several people not believe them and accuse them of price gouging.
Yeah, that's
Well,
crazy.
I believed them. I mean, I knew about it when I went to the state. It was more of the fact that I just can't get any more glassware. I already own 20 growlers. If I walk back in the house with a new growler, my husband's going to kill me.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that's the kind of law that's going to solve anything. It's just like one more burden in the industry that just don't make sense.
And I believe me, when it comes to high gravity beers, I can't drink 64 ounces of it.
No,
And I appreciate the 32-ounce grunts, but I don't see why there isn't choice. So if I want to be trashed and be stupid, I can get all the Budweiser I want. I can get a 24-pack of Budweiser or a 30-pack of Busch Light and go get wrecked and hurt somebody. So I guess. I think it's going to be. They've sued him on this isn't a public menace, so that's the only reason you can make laws. So this is unconstitutional. So I'm anxious to see how this court hearing goes.
Matt, let me say this. Regardless of how many good points are made by the people who are doing the lawsuit, the most salient point is it just simply doesn't make any sense.
No.
You can buy 32 ounces of beer, you can buy 128 ounces of beer, but you can't buy 64. That just makes absolutely zero sense. And the unfortunate part about all this is if history is an indicator, they're gonna lose a lawsuit. The laws of Florida in general are ridiculous. And this is just going to be another lawsuit that has a lot of merit, but will not make it anywhere in the state of Florida.
Especially since it's an election season, and alcohol is bad. We don't want to be in favor of people getting drunk. Well,
I don't know if alcohol is looked at as bad as much as it was. I mean, look in Virginia at how the politicians bent over backwards to get stoned to come here, and then high-fived each other like a bunch of frat brothers. When they did. So, I'm not sure. In some places, alcohol bad, and some places, alcohol good.
One can make the argument that the law as it stands right now encourages drunkenness. I mean, if you're forcing somebody to buy a higher quantity of beer, what do you think is going to happen when they drink that higher quantity of beer? They ain't going to get more sober.
They're going to go to the hospital. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It seems so arbitrary.
I'm not sure if this was the same issue. A little while ago, I think Cigar City was talking about leaving Florida. If this passed and if this was going to go forward, Cigar City was talking about leaving Florida.
Yeah, I remember that.
They can come to Ohio, by the way. I'm just saying.
Well, not unless you lift that 12% thing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm working on it. All right.
Florida has that going for us.
All right. Hey, big game last night. Who stayed up and watched the World Series game last night? I mean, how many times if you're not a baseball fan in October, I don't know what's wrong with you. I guess everybody's all excited about football, but Randy's got a story here about craft beer winning.
Yeah, so we found this article from a website called MarketWatch.com, and they basically kind of speak about the relationship between baseball and craft beer, right? Well, yeah, baseball and craft beer, and this is relatively, I don't want to say a new phenomenon, but a renewed phenomenon, right? So at one point in time, I mean, if you even just look at some of the baseball stadiums that are in the major leagues right now, you'll see that the Milwaukee Brewers play in Miller Park. The Cardinals play in Busch Stadium. The Rockies play in Coors Field. So obviously, big beer has somewhat of a stamp on Major League Baseball as it is. But ever since the economic downturn, these companies, well, not just economic downturn, but also consolidation, i.e. Miller and Coors kind of becoming one, Anheuser-Busch being bought out by AB InBev, they've kind of backed off from their relationships with individual individual teams outside of their names being on the stadium. So the big beer companies now tend to have a relationship with Major League Baseball as a whole, but very few of them, well, almost probably none of them have relationships with individual teams. Well, as a result, this creates opportunity for craft beer, and we saw that last night in the two teams that played, the Kansas City Royals and the San Francisco Giants. If you watch the Royals game, you see that they have like a Budweiser-esque size billboard with Boulevard on it in their stadium, right? So craft beer is coming in. San Francisco, they have Gordon Biersch in their park. Gordon Biersch was there when they were at Candlestick Park, and when they moved to the park now known as AT&T Park, Gordon Biersch was able to follow them there. And not only is Gordon Biersch there, but they're also they're in, and I believe they're in the new San Francisco 49ers Levi Stadium. They're there. They're in, I believe, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim or whatever. They're there. So it's becoming more and more of a thing, and this is only creating more and more opportunities for big beer, or not big beer, but for craft beer, because at one point in time, before big beer had their stamp on individual teams, small teams were sponsored by their local breweries when brewers had relationships with the small teams. So if you go back, like teams like Detroit and the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Braves when they were up in Boston, and the Mets, these were all teams that were sponsored by breweries such as Ballantine and remember, I don't know if anybody, I'm sure you remember Stroh's. Oh, Stroh's and Eddie Bowes. But these relationships with craft brewers was a thing of the norm, and it seems as if everything is cyclical. It's starting to come back around, and I think Gil made a point a while back, and we were talking about the emergence of so many small breweries, and it seems as if it's getting to a point where like each community has their own pub and or their own brewery, and that's the way it used to be when craft beer had relationships with specific teams. So
it's the idea of having patrons, right? Having people that support, that comes week after week, and I think that's I see the same. It builds friendship. You build faces that are recognizable every time you walk into those places.
Yeah, and craft beer sponsorship within sports is growing. Oscar Blues, since they just moved to Brevard, North Carolina, they have a sponsorship with the Charlotte Motor Speedway in NASCAR. The Craft Brew Alliance, those are the guys that own Widmer. They're the sponsor for the Portland Timbers. The Seattle Sounders, which is another soccer club, they're sponsored with Red Hook here.
When I see a boxing ring that's got Founders on it or Stone on it, then I guess we know that the big beers have been broken.
Arrived, man.
So that's fantastic, and I love it. I love going to I went down to the Richmond Squirrels, the AAA team down here, and they had Center of the Universe beer on in cans to compete with. They still had Bud Light and Miller Coors, whatever, but they had some craft offerings, and I thought, man, if I'm going to pay $7 for a 12-ounce can of beer, at least it better be craft. So
yeah,
so that's fantastic.
Man, real quick, and just one last point. Their Anchor also has a relationship with the Giants. I mean, they serve beer in their ballpark, but they just signed an agreement with the Giants to open up a tap room and plaza outside of AT&T Park. So this is part of a $1.6 billion development that I guess the ball club is doing, and they're going to open up a 212,000 square foot brewery, restaurant, and museum just outside of the park. Wow. And so their current facility employs 150 employees. This will add an additional 200 employees. This will boost Anchor's potential output from 120,000 barrels to 600,000 barrels at both facilities combined. Wow. And this is all because of the relationship with craft beer and baseball.
Are they going to still open ferment at this new facility? I guess that would be crazy to change their marquee.
I think it's just style. A tap room, right? It's not a brewery there. I think they just opened it.
He said it's going to increase their production.
Yep.
Wow. So fantastic. Well, that's something to watch for. And 21st Amendment is right down the street, I think, too, there in San Francisco too. We had Zambo on here a couple of years ago or a year ago. So, all right, well, that is that. We have a story that we're going to have to cover next week, I think. It's called, we were going to talk with Mark about it. Maybe we can get him to come back and hang out with us again. It was about beer trading, the beer exchange .io website. So join us next week. We'll talk about that at the top of the show. But really, we want to move into our review of the week real quick. And John Stardumsky from Google Plus reviewed the Heavy Seas Uncharted Water Series Holy Sheet Belgian-style Abbey Ale, aged in brandy barrels. You know, I always complain about things that have too many words in the title, but that's legit all right there. So, but he reviews this beer, and I've seen this. I've always passed on it because I've heard it's a big boozy monster. But after I read this here, he says, pours to a dark mahogany color with a thick, creamy head of tan-colored foam and a rich, dark nose of prune and port. Taking a sip, the beer has a thick, dark, sweet maltiness to it, redolent of plums and prunes, raisins, and vinous, boozy brandy. Tasty, woody oak notes, a hint of vanilla, caramel, sweet rock candy, malt notes. Chocolate and toasted nuts are all over the place here. And the beer finishes sweet and boozy with a noticeable alcohol warmth. And I think it's still pretty hot. So that sounds as boozy. Has anybody had that beer? That's been. I think
it is boozy. You can get the alcohol, but it's still a pretty good beer.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of different tasting notes in there, but I do like the fact that he must be a writer. He uses the word redolent in there. So I mean that's. That's impressive in itself. But thanks, John. We're going to post your thing, and thank you. Keep writing them. We'll keep reading them. We're going to move into releases and festivals. And Gil, take us with the release of the week.
Yeah, I just want to touch quick. I don't want to take long here, but I call our friends of Founders Brewing Companies, which when are we having them on the show?
The 20th. We're going to have Dave Engbers, who is one of the co-founders of Founders. The co-founders of Founders is going to be on this show on the 20th.
Yeah, so they're a good friend of ours, and I talked to them on November 3rd. Mark on your calendar. Backwoods Bastard is coming out. They told me that they didn't want to really. I tried to push them to get to know how big was their production this year. They just told me they increased by a lot, so they're gonna try. The beer is gonna be still limited, but gonna be available on their any place that they have their footprint where they get distribution. I'll put the map where the Bastards are gonna be on our event. You guys can check that out on our event. But the first batch from this beer was brewed over 500 days ago. And they went around and tasted every single barrel because they don't do the line thing, and then they're going to mix everything and get it consistent. So watch for that.
It may be my favorite beer from Founders.
It's
better than KBS?
I love it way more than KBS.
Yeah, I don't know about my favorite beers from Founder, but it's the best smelling beer on the market. I mean, that beer I could just not drink, just sit and just like you. It's just amazing. So yeah, check that out. It's going to be around. It's going to be 4 packs, but we know some of our states going to break those packs and going to go.
Yeah, for sure.
$15.
I was only able to buy one bottle last year, so it was pretty limited last year.
I only got one as well this year. So they increased their production, but the consumption of their beers grew.
All right.
Yeah.
So
That's
maybe we'll ask. Maybe we can nail Dave down on some real numbers.
Yes.
We can pin him down when we have him on the show here. Maybe he'll not join us if I keep threatening that too.
Yes, right.
We're gonna pin him down.
Well, whatever. Just
Stone has got an Arrogant Bastard box set out, and it's going to have a Double Bastard, a Lucky Bastard, and a Bourbon Barrel Aged Arrogant Bastard. So that is, and apparently that Barrel Aged Bastard is only in the box set. I guess it was on tap in some places, but it's only going to be bottled in that box set. So that came out on the 27th. Great, and some of you guys have had that. Doug, did you say that was delicious? The Barrel Aged Arrogant Bastard.
I did not care for it.
You did not care for it. Randy was the one that liked it. I'm sorry.
I liked it.
Last year was good. I haven't had this year yet, so I don't know.
How do they get just 3 bottles in the box? Is there a glass in there with it, or is it just?
I think it's a special size box. With 3 bombers.
It's triangular. All right, and we'll look.
It might be long.
Oh, okay.
I got you. Like the cardboard
All right.
thing in it.
Great Lakes. We haven't talked much about them. They've got a Christmas ale coming out brewed with honey and spiced fresh ginger and cinnamon. That sounds kind of Christmassy and delicious.
So good.
Funky Buddha has got a triple barrel-aged Belgian ale. And Boulevard's got the Nutcracker Ale that came out here the other day. Avery's Antonius Carmen barrel-aged sour ale. Coronado's got a 2014 Stupid Stout. Noda's got a CAVU Kolsch notable release. That's the lightest beer in the list. Everything is stout, Abbey.
I wonder if we had the hop shortage. We're gonna have a barrel shortage pretty soon. Everybody.
That's got to be coming soon. Santa Fe has got a black IPA that's coming out November 1st. I think we talked about that last week, but we love the folks at Santa Fe, so we're going to mention that again. Get some of that black IPA before it's gone. We love it. Hoppin' Frog from Akron, Ohio. That's right in your neck of the woods there, isn't it? What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I haven't had it yet.
They've got the King Goes a Home, 6% ABV.
Yeah.
And
LeBron James.
LeBron James. Oh, now I get it.
That's what it's for, yeah.
The King Goes a Home. All right. Dry Dock from Aurora, Colorado. It's got a Signature Series double brown ale and double hazelnut brown ale aged in whiskey barrels coming out this weekend. So if you're in Aurora, Colorado, go check that out. Anybody else know anything, other releases we need to mention before we move to festivals?
No, but it's a great time for people that like barrel-aged beer.
Oh, yeah. Or heavy beers at all, spiced beers and Russian Imperial Stouts. And this is the
Can't
season.
tell the fall and winter's coming.
That's right. Festivals-wise, we've got
Winter's
the NTX Beer Week, Dallas and Fort Worth and vicinity. It's got a festival, the Beer Week, the 31st through November 9th. New York City Craft Beer Festival Autumn Harvest is the 31st through the 1st. And this weekend, All Colorado Beer Festival is on Saturday the 1st. Bluffton International and Craft Beer Festival in Bluffton, South Carolina. Is that close to you, Ashley? Nowhere near you? Other end of the state?
Beaufort County.
Beaufort County.
Yeah.
November 1st. Man, you're missing all the good stuff, right?
I know, man.
Fall Fest of Ales. Fest of Ales. Ha, 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 instead of festivals. That's a good play on words. Jamesville, Wisconsin, November the 1st. Bourbon, and Barbecue Festival in Nashville, Tennessee. Man,
Don't waste your time going there.
No. It seems like... Oh, really? Was it terrible?
Yeah, because they had it up here as well, and it's all beer that I can get at a grocery store.
That sounds like the festival I went to.
All right. Sorry, Nashville. We're not coming to town this weekend. Wilmington Beer Week is in Wilmington, Delaware, November 1st through the 8th. Is it all right if we go to that one, Randy?
I don't know. You got that's Allen's neck of the woods.
Rio de Cerveza Brew Festival in Yuma, Arizona, November the 1st. So that is a list. That's a rundown of the list. Anybody want to add anything? Who's got a festival in their neck of the woods? Mark, you got anything going on up there in Ohio?
No, nothing I can think of.
Yeah, there's a festival in your basement all the time, right?
Yes, there is.
Actually,
We got an All Sours Festival coming up in Charlotte on November the 15th.
November the 15th, an All Sours Festival in Charlotte. That sounds like something worth getting a hotel room for.
Yeah.
Checking out.
And there's one here in well, not here, but there's one in D.C. Tomorrow. Actually, it's not a festival, but it's like a special annual release that DC Brow does. They release, I think it's a Belgian strong ale they release every year on Halloween. It might be tap only, I'm not sure, but it's an event that they have at one of the bars in DC that seems to be pretty popular.
It's not at DC Brow, it's at a bar.
Everybody should check out their websites on their local brews because I think every brewery going to have a Halloween party of some kind this week.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, get your costume on, go to a brewery and enjoy it. So that's it for us. Mark Pyle, thanks for hanging out with us. It was great talking with you. And until next week, man, go out and find some good friends. Take them to your basement. Find some good beer. and mind those P's and Q's.
This has been Pints and Quarts, brought to you by Craft Beer Nation. You can show your support for our podcast by subscribing to our content on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, or our website, craftbeernation.org. Thanks for listening.